So in this video we're going to use some of the keyframing skills we already learned and start to apply some other principles of animation to create a bouncing ball. So I'm going to make a new composition and drag in the basketball PNG from your pack, and we're just going to scale that so it fits a bit better into our frame here, so about 20%. And what we're going to do is just create the basic keyframing parameters of making a ball bounce. Because this is going to be for a looping animation, we're going to trim the timeline to 2 seconds. If we right click that selection and hit trim comp to work area, then it will cut that down. If we think of the bottom of the composition as the floor, we're just going to start by placing our basketball on the floor at the bottom of this composition. So in the starting frame, and then therefore at the ending frame, it will start at the floor. So when it loops through, it will continue to be a looping ball. So if we just hit a positional keyframe there, and then go halfway through, 1 second, we'll jump our ball up, and then that final frame there, we'll just pop in the exact positional data from the first keyframe. So there we are. So we have our very animatronic bouncing ball. So now to give our ball a little bit more of realistic motion and timing, we're going to add in another keyframe, about 10 frames in, just jumping the ball up at a faster rate than that kind of linear pace it was going at before. As you can see, it hits the points, it's kind of jarringly bouncing. So to help assist this, we can actually use something called a keyframe velocity. So if we go down to the keyframe assistant and it says easy ease, this is going to ease in and out of that position. You can see as it bounces up and through, it's looking a little bit more realistic. If we jump over to our third keyframe and hit the same, we should have something that's a little bit more lifelike. You can see the ball bounces off the floor quicker and then slows down as we get to the top kind of portion. So that easing's definitely helped, but it's far from realistic. So we're actually going to open up something called the graph editor to help with a better view of changing those keyframes. So this little button here is the graph editor. It's not going to show up anything at the start, but as soon as we hit position, it should come up with, there we are, a graph showing you the rate of change between each keyframe. So if we click this little button down here that separates out the X and Y values that aren't locked, we can then go in and adjust them more subtly. So you can see this is not looking great right now, but if we start to play around with the bezieling of these lines, we should be able to get the rate of change in terms of the position to look a lot more lifelike. So with a little bit of work and just adding an extra keyframe at 18 frames in, a little bit of adjustment, we've got a much more lifelike bounce, and you can see as it speeds up and then slows down in the top quarter of the animation. So when you're happy with the rate of your bounce, we're now going to look at applying the squash and stretch principles of animation. And this is just governing that when anything deforms or moves around, it's going to change in shape. So obviously when a ball hits the floor, it's going to bounce, and some of the height is going to be squish out sideways. So we're just going to jump it to about, we're going to unlock the scaling parameters and jump it to 25-15. So it's important we change these by the same amount. So if I'm putting 5 in one, I put 5 in the other, and vice versa. You can see that squashes down there. Adding that keyframe, we're just going to change the position so it actually is on the floor. So it's now become 990. And we're just going to copy that and make sure that's at the end of our animation as well. Then come in and about 10 frames again, we'll just set the scaling back to where it was. So back to 20 and 20. And if we have a look at that, you can see we have the basics of the bounce and that squash and stretch there applied there. So this also comes into a second part, which is anticipation. So as it's falling towards the ground, in theory you should see the ball start to thin as it would be gaining speed. So it's anticipating that it's then going to hit the floor, so the bounce has more impact. So if we change this, then flip it around, so 15 and 25, you can see that's quite long, so we might have to trim that back down. But let's have a look at it and then see if it's a bit too much. Yeah, so it's exaggerating it quite a lot, so I'm probably just going to calm down those parameters. But you can get the gist of how that kind of adding that in really helps with selling that this is bouncing on a floor, or in this case, the bottom of this composition. So checking these down to 18 and 22 at the start and end, and then repositioning our Y plane, you can see Now we've got a much more realistic bounce.